If you've just started using DataGrip and need to get up to speed with it, then this is the video for you. In this video, you'll learn how to connect to a database, write SQL queries, work with files, and many of the other DataGrip features. First, open DataGrip. I'll assume you've installed it. If not, you can download it from the JetBrains website and install it. You may see this import settings screen if you have VS Code installed. You can import some settings, but I'll click Skip Import. You'll then see this Welcome to DataGrip screen. You can do a few things here, such as create a new project or open an existing one. For now, I'll click New Project. Later in the video, I'll show you how to open an existing project. Enter a name for the project and click OK. You'll see this minimal home screen with some commands and keyboard shortcuts here, and a tab on the right about installing an AI assistant. I won't install this for now, so I'll click this dash here. The screen looks pretty empty, and if you've got experience with other SQL editors, this might be a bit strange, but it's easy to get started. Let's say the first thing we want to do is create a connection so we can work with our database. To do this, we open the database view by pressing Alt and 1. The Database Explorer is shown on the left. Here is where we can view our connections and create new connections. To create a new connection, click the plus icon on this panel. Select Data Source and you'll see a long list of all the different data sources that DataGrip supports. For this video, I'll use the MySQL database I have installed on my computer. But as you can see, there are a lot of databases you could use. So I'll scroll down this list and select MySQL. After a moment, this window appears where you can provide the details for the connection. I'll start by changing the name, which is what the connection is shown as in the database panel. There are a lot of settings you can change here, which I imagine depends on the database vendor you've chosen. For me, I have a simple MySQL installation on my computer, so I can just enter the username and password. There's a comment here about missing driver files that I need to download. This is because DataGrip doesn't come with all of the possible drivers. You can just download the drivers for the databases you need. So I'll click the download link on this comment. After a few seconds, the drivers are downloaded and this message disappears. You can test the connection to see if you've entered the right details by clicking Test Connection. This message appears indicating it is correct. So I'll click OK and the connection is saved. Here's the main screen of DataGrip. On the left in the Database Explorer, we have our new connection. In the main part of the screen, we can now see a tab labelled Console. This is an area where you can run SQL queries. Let's expand our connection on the left. Click the arrow next to the connection here. We don't see anything shown here. We know there are some schemas in this database, but where are they? Next to the connection, it says 0 of 8. This is the number of schemas shown out of the total number on the database. If you click here, you can select the schemas you want to show. I'll select the Secular schema and click Outside, and it is shown. By default, DataGrip doesn't show every schema on the database, and you can select the items to show. This is very handy if you have a lot of schemas and you want to keep things simple. It seems DataGrip has really tried to only show you the things you need to see, and I think this is good. Once the schema is shown, you can expand it and see the different object types. Expand tables and you can see all of the tables here. Let's write some SQL. I'll select from the film table. To run the query, click on this green triangle button. You can see the results at the bottom of the screen. However, you may get an error that says no database selected. This can happen because DataGrip doesn't know where the film table is. We can solve this in two ways. We can either qualify our table name by putting the word Secular, then a dot before the table name. Or we can select our schema from the drop-down on the right, where it says Schema. It looks like DataGrip has selected this already for me. When you select your database, you can run the query again and the results are shown at the bottom. The Results panel shows a table of results, as you might expect. You can hover over the table headings and see the data types for each column shown. You can also see different icons next to the columns, which indicates if they have a constraint, such as a primary key. There are several icons here in the Results panel that let you work with the data. You can refresh the results, add or remove rows, and make edits to rows. DataGrip also has a pretty good autocomplete feature. We can write a new query here. I'll select from the table and come back to the columns. After the select query, we can trigger the autocomplete by pressing Control Space. A list of columns from this table are shown here along with their data types. There's also an entry here that has a list of all columns. If you select this, all of the columns from the table are shown, which is a nice little shortcut. Let's run the query. We can either click this Execute button or press Ctrl Enter. You'll see this pop-up appear. You're given the option of either running just the single query under the cursor or all statements in the script. Press Enter to run just this statement or select the other option to run the script. We can see the results of the query at the bottom here. You may have noticed that when you run a query, the results of the previous query are removed. This happens by default. If you want to keep the results tab between queries, you can pin the tab. Click the little pin icon here and the tab is pinned. We can run another query and see the results for this query are shown. We can also see the results from the first query are still shown. DataGrip stores a list of all of the queries you have executed. You can see this by clicking this Query History button. A window appears and a list of all of the queries you have executed are shown. You can click the items in the list on the left and see a preview of the query on the right. If you want to add the query back into your SQL editor, select the query and click the Paste button. There's a handy feature in DataGrip called In-Editor Results. You can click this button on the toolbar and enable it. With this enabled, let's run a query. We do this and we can see a results panel appear under the query. There's a lot we can do here. We can scroll these results, search the results, add filters and export the data. It's a pretty handy feature. There's a drop-down button on the toolbar here that says Playground. If you click on it, you can see the options of Script or Playground. This is shown on the toolbar, so it must be something used often. It actually lets you toggle between two different modes. Playground mode is where all of the queries are resolved based on the value in the schema chooser. It's suitable if you have a set of unconnected queries, and it's the default for these query consoles. Script mode is where the start of the file is resolved based on the value in the schema chooser, but any use statements in the script will change this. It's ideal for queries that should be run as a script and is the default for local files. The console part is shown as a tab. We can create a new tab by going to File, then New, then SQL File. I'll enter a name for the file and press Enter. A new tab is shown at the top of the screen and looks just like the console. It has an icon that reflects the connection you're using, and for me it's MySQL. You can write SQL queries here just like the other console tab. On the same row as the tab names on the far right is a button with 3 dots. We can click this and see some actions appear. These actions can be handy as you work with more files and tabs. The first option here, Recent Files, will show you a list of files you have recently opened or viewed. You can open these files again from this screen. The next action in this list is Recent Locations. This shows a list of areas in scripts you have worked on recently. This can be helpful when working with long files or multiple files to go back to where you were earlier. The next option is Go to File. This is helpful when we have an existing project open. I'll open a project later in the video to see. On the top of the screen is a few icons. They let you show and hide different panels within DataGrip. The first one is Database Explorer, and it's enabled because this is the panel on the left. The next is Services, and that is enabled as it appeared when we ran the query before. We can click these icons to show and hide these windows. The third icon is Files. You can click this and a panel of your project files is shown on the right. There are many more windows available, which you can see if you click on the 3 dots here. In the Files list, we can see our project here that we created earlier. Within the Consoles list, we can see a list of the different console tabs we have opened. We can actually create files to store within our project. Right-click on the project, select New, then SQL File. Enter a name for the file and press Enter. The file is saved in your project and is shown as a new tab on the top of the screen. It has a different icon. We see a purple cylinder icon indicating it's a file in the project and not a console file like the others. We don't see the toolbar icons, but we see this warning that says SQL Dialect is not configured. Click the Change Dialect to button and you'll see this window. You can make selections for the Global SQL Dialect, the Project SQL Dialect, and one for this file. You can click OK to make it generic SQL, or you can make a selection from the list. Click OK. Let's write some SQL. We'll write a simple select query. How do we run it? We don't see the toolbar. We can press Ctrl-Enter to run it. The query is run and the toolbar that we saw earlier appears. Let's open a location that I have in version control with some SQL files. I'll open my database star repository folder. To do this, go to the menu and select Open. I'll browse to my database star repository folder here and click Open. The folder is now opened and appears in the file list on the right of the screen. I can see all of the files in the folder here. I can open a file by double-clicking on it or dragging it to the main area. I can work with the files and save them and they will be updated. The project still says Test Data Grip here, and I believe this has happened because I just opened an existing folder and haven't created a new Data Grip project for this. I could create a new project and add the existing folder if I wanted to, but this is how we can open an existing folder in Data Grip. Data Grip lets you import data into your database. You can either import or export a single table or import or export the entire database. To focus on a single table, you can right-click on a table, go to Import Export, then select one of the options from the list. You can export your data to a file or import data from a file, dump the DDL to a file, or use MySQL dump, which is available because I've connected to a MySQL database. At the database level, you can right-click on the database, go to Import Export, then either import the file, dump the DDL, or use MySQL dump. By default, Data Grip shows in a dark theme and I think it works really well. If you want to change the theme, you can do so easily. Click on the cog icon on the top right, which has several items in it. Then select Theme. A window appears with the different themes available. You can click on one of the entries to change the theme or press the number that relates to the theme you want. The theme is now activated. To change it back, go back to the theme list and select a different theme. Another handy feature in Data Grip is the different view modes. Click on the cog icon again and select View Mode. A list of different modes appears. This is like a preset way of viewing Data Grip for different situations. For example, let's click Presentation Mode. This will hide a lot of the panels and zoom into the screen a lot. This is obviously helpful for presenting your screen. To return to the default view, click on the cog icon, then View Mode, and then select Exit Presentation Mode. There are a few other modes here, so try them out and see what works for you. We've seen a few different settings to change within Data Grip, but there is a settings menu that has a lot more we can change. You can access this by going to the cog icon, then Settings, or going to File, then Settings. On the left, you have different categories of settings. On the right are the settings you can change. Browse through here to see how you may want to change the behavior of Data Grip. You can also use the search box here to search for a specific setting. As you can see, Data Grip is a clean and feature-packed SQL editor. I've shown you some of the basic features and there are many more included. Hopefully this helps you get started with using Data Grip. Thanks for watching.